You told me there was no cure, that these people were dead, not sick. I chose not to believe that.
Hey, Walking Dead fans, welcome back to the channel. Let's do a video on the Nebraska thing.
I hear Nebraska's nice. Nebraska.
As you'll notice in the thumbnail, it's Rick that actually said, I hear it's nice in Nebraska. But let's go over that scene and see what they said. And is it an Easter egg to the new show World Beyond? This was season 2, episode 8, and it was titled Nebraska. And what led up to this, we're going to see Glenn, Rick, and Herschel in a bar. Herschel had stopped drinking a long time ago, but Shane let the walkers out of the barn and they were all killed. These were all friends and family of Herschel. His second wife was in amongst them. And Herschel thought, he told Rick this, Herschel thought that they were just sick and that the government would come up with a cure, that they would fix it. That's why he was putting the walkers in the barn, because they were friends and family, people of the community, and he thought they could be cured.
There is no hope. And you know it now, like I do.
So when they all were killed and he realized the world has really ended and that there is no cure and that these people were really dead and reanimated because Shane shot through the chest 3 or 4 times, is like, can a real live person do that? So Herschel was kind of, his religion, his whole, everything about him was shaken at that moment. And so he started drinking again. He went off into town to this bar and started drinking. And this is where Rick and Glenn end up finding him. So while they're there, Rick ends up talking him into coming back to the farm. But right as they were about to leave, Dave and Tony show up. And it's the interaction between Rick, Herschel, Glenn, and Dave and Tony that we're going to talk about. So Dave and Tony, we don't know a lot about their backstory, just what we learned right here. And from Randall, you know, Rick, Glenn, and Herschel, they captured Randall that was from this group, Dave and Tony's group, and they did learn some other stuff about them. They learned that they raped a couple of girls in front of their dad, and this was just a terrible group. So we kind of saw that through Dave and Tony. They were some sketchy looking dudes, right? Rick saw through that. But what we did learn, Dave and Tony, they come in and they said, hey, these people are alive. They probably saw the vehicles with some supplies or something in them out front, or some fresh vehicles, and like, hey, somebody stopped off here. Maybe they didn't make it back out of town. But they come in, they see everybody there, and they're like, hey, these people are alive, cool. And they almost, I guess, wanted to, Dave was trying to make it seem like, hey, cool people. But as our guys and Dave and Tony start to talk back and forth, Dave tells a story of kind of where they're from. They said they're from Philadelphia, come out of Philadelphia. They were heading toward Washington, D.C. because they heard there was a refugee camp there. But then the streets, the roads were all jam-packed with cars, so they took off into the countryside, the back roads, and they ended up, I guess, you know, at this point in Georgia. But it seemed like they're kind of nomadic from location to location. But the way Dave was talking, hey, farm sounds nice. We can sit up there for a while. Let's go back to it. And Glenn's the one that kind of let that slip, that they had a farm. But Rick, of course, is like, hell no, these guys ain't going back to the farm with us. But it was from Dave that they did learn that Fort Benning was overrun. And, you know, back when I was watching this, I was like, the dude could be lying. He seemed sketchy. But then later on with the governor and that tank, and that came from Fort Benning, I think. And the guy, the military guy, so he confirmed that Fort Benning had been overrun. So I don't think Dave was lying right here in this instance.
Every group we came across had a new rumor about a way out of this thing.
But as they were talking, Dave and Tony were telling about some of the stuff that they've heard, right? Tony said he heard there were some boats down at the Gulf ferrying people to some islands. So if that is true, then that's a story in itself possibly, because what does Dave say? That they were moving people by train out to the Midwest, Kansas, Nebraska, and Tony mentioned Nebraska being low population and lots of guns. But I think that's a pretty key factor, not that they knew that the CRM group and all of that was going to play out in later seasons. I don't think they knew it back then. That's just some of the script that they came up with. And did they play off of that script as far as the location of World Beyond being in Nebraska? Possibly, but it definitely is an Easter egg that you could attach it to. Because what he said does actually sound like something CRM would do, or the Civic Republic, if that's already kind of started to form this early on. So there were trains moving people to the Midwest. Dave went on to joke about Nebraska with Glenn, saying, "Hey kid, you ever been to Nebraska? There's a reason why they call it the Flower State." And everybody snickered a little bit, but in all reality, they don't actually call it the Flower State. Thus, a reason you could point to maybe Dave was lying in this instance, but he wasn't lying about Fort Benning, so we're going to take this Nebraska thing as he did really hear that rumor, as well as the Washington, D.C. refugee camp rumor and the other rumors that they discussed. The rest of the scene plays out with Dave pretty much trying to talk his way into the farm, wanting to get taken to the farm where Rick and Herschel and everyone, Glenn, was hanging out. Their group was hanging out. Hey, let's join groups. And I think we learned from Randall later there might have been around 30 of them, and it seemed like they were mostly men and not very good people. But Dave got behind the bar, fixing himself a drink. He lined up Rick pretty much in between him and Tony, who had went over there and took a leak. So Rick was in the crossfire. He knew what was about to happen. He was just waiting for the moment, and it was the quick draw. Dave went for his gun. Rick pops him in the head, turns around, shoots Tony 3 times, last time in the head, 2 to the chest, 1 to the head. When Rick told Dave, "No, you cannot go to the farm," he said, "Well, what do you expect us to do?" And Rick said, "I hear Nebraska's nice." It got a chuckle out of Dave, and so Rick's the one that actually said that line. Dave was the one that told them about Nebraska, what he had heard, the trains taking people out there to the Midwest. So that's pretty cool. It could be a link to CRM. It could be a good Easter egg, a cool Easter egg in the whole series. What do you guys think about Dave and Tony and what they said about Nebraska, the trains taking people out to the Midwest? Do you think it's the CRM or the Civic Republic? And remember, this is the early days. Rick hasn't been awake that long. He woke up, went to the quarry camp. They went into the downtown, ended up out on the highway. Carl gets shot. They end up at the farm. There wasn't that many days passed at that point. So we're early in, around like 3 months-ish. So would the Civic Republic have time to get their shit together, form, the government come back together? Still a cool throwback. Either way, let me know what you guys think about it, the connections, any ideas you guys may have, any other clues throughout the series that might tie into some things, some Easter eggs. You can even just say hi if you got a moment. I appreciate all the views and the comments. The views is really what supports the channel. I don't have a Patreon or anything like that. It's not a lot, but it really does help out as far as supporting the channel. Just simply watching videos and letting the ads play out maybe every now and then. But I do appreciate the support and all of the community and family and discussion that goes on here. Hope everyone is staying very safe, and let's level that curve out and get this thing gone and out of the way. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more dead stuff.
You people are like a plague. Give you shelter, and you destroyed it all.